Garen, the Proteas lineup for the fixture against Sri Lanka, what changes do you foresee? Do you foresee any? The guys have been given a good few days rest now to really put their thinking caps on. How do you see them coming out?
I don't see many changes. We're not typically a country that makes many changes to any of our sporting codes. So I think the team that did duty in the last match against UAE is going to be pretty much the team that starts. Our bowlers starting with them, with Philander back and Morkel and Tahir bowling fantastically well. Staying. I think that's pretty much going to be the starting foursome, if you like. Then we're going to get a couple of more overs from JP Duminy, maybe Faf du Plessis turning his arm over. We've seen AB de Villiers even bowl. Really depends, I think, on the SCG wicket. It's known to take spin, which is again an added worry that if we do have to bat second, how are we going to face the Sri Lankan spinners? And then at the top of the order, there've been calls for Quinton de Kock to maybe step aside. He did score, I think, 26 in the last game, which I think was his highest score by about 20 runs. So, I'm not saying he's back in form, but he's the sort of player that could, in a quarterfinal, step up and really put together an innings of substance and perhaps even lead us to victory. We only got 15 players there. You have to pick 11 of them. There are going to be some players that are hardly going to play any cricket on this tour. So, it is tricky. I think there's just too much to lose, too much on the line. We waited 4 years for this. We've got the whole choker tag sort of hovering in the background there. I don't think Coach Russell Domingo is going to tinker too much with his starting lineup. He's going to go with the tried and tested and really see what happens. If it fails, there'll be questions asked of him. But I'm confident enough in the starting 11 that sure if we bat first, we'll have an outstanding chance of winning.
Do you agree, Rob? I mean, do you see our batting lineup sort of really finally hitting their straps? The Quinton de Kock, of course, the quandary with him is because he keeps. So if anything, he might get moved down the order, but probably not.
Yeah, AB de Villiers has been sort of surprisingly vocal, unless of course they're sort of trying to sell us.
He doesn't want to keep.
I know.
He's been adamant about that.
But unless they're sort of selling a few porkies ahead of the game, who knows? It's curious because in the past, AB has at different times said that he's actually quite keen to keep and that he doesn't mind the chore. At the moment, I suspect what's happening is because he's been in such sublime form as a batsman and doing that as a sort of as a fielder rather than the extra responsibility of keeping. And we know he has issues with his fitness with a sort of a chronic back issue that flares up from time to time. So he seems to have made it clear that he doesn't want to keep, which of course is what is going to really save Quinton de Kock's position potentially, unless they do drop a bomb and drop him, drop de Kock, which probably now won't happen. But the tricky one is if they decide to go just the 6 batsman formula, and there are some people who are saying, forget about trying to balance the team. Why don't we just go with our very best 6 batsmen and then our very best 5 bowlers and forget about a sort of bridging player like a Farhan Behardine, for instance, who of course may well still play, depending on how they are going to balance it. But the problem you've got is if you decide to go just 6 batsmen and Quinton de Kock's going to stay in the team, we know that he's palpably out of form and he's got to be one of those 6 batsmen. We know that there's also going to be a long tail to that side if they do go 6 batsmen and 7 bowlers, because then you're probably looking at Vernon Philander batting at sort of 7. Hasn't really done it at one-day level. I rate him as a batsman, but more at test level than at one-day level. So it's actually still a mighty headache. And how they read the conditions on the morning of the game, I think is going to be quite crucial to South Africa's chances of doing well. It's still a big issue as to how they balance the team, and they really need to get it right on the day. They can do themselves a big favour if they make the correct judgment call on the team. Obviously, we're not there, so we don't get a look at the SCG pitch. But as Garen mentioned, it takes turn, and that may just encourage them to think, okay, JP Duminy can perhaps be that number 5 lone bowler with perhaps a little bit of dibbly-dob from AB de Villiers not keeping, and thus available to bowl a few overs if necessary to do that joint number 5 role. But it's high risk because the Sri Lankan stroke players will be taking a look at that South African bowling lineup. If it's just 4 specialists plus JP Duminy, stroke AB de Villiers, stroke Faf du Plessis, whatever, and thinking we can target a bowler number 5. So whichever way South Africa select their team, there is going to be a balance problem. There's just no way of getting around it.
James, just to wrap up, we'll leave the South Africa-Sri Lanka prediction because there's too much emotion there. But the other 3 fixtures, Bangladesh versus India, Australia versus Pakistan, New Zealand versus West Indies, who do you see going through from those other 3 fixtures?
Well, you know, if it goes according to sort of how the teams have played to date, you know, India topped our pool. They got to play Bangladesh. Obviously, two countries that know each other really well from the subcontinent. I can't see India losing to Bangladesh. That would be the big upset and surprise of the round. You got the Pakistan and West Indies, who haven't looked that good, but on their day, if Chris Gayle does come off,
Pakistan seem to be peaking at the right time.
Yeah, I was going to say that you know, they're the sort of team that can surprise a team. They surprised us, you know, so in our group match. So, you know, whether they can do it again, I'm not too sure. It remains to be seen. Australia, Pakistan, I think from all South Africans, will be pulling for Pakistan to upset Australia there. And then obviously we'll have a keen eye on the West Indies up against New Zealand, because if we do get through, you know, we're going to play the winner of that match. You know, we've beaten the West Indies. We beat them here in South Africa just before the World Cup. You know, New Zealand have been in fantastic form. They've really been, along with I think India, the standout two teams of the tournament so far. I'd like to see New Zealand deservedly beat West Indies and South Africa play New Zealand in the semi-finals. So those would be my picks. It's pretty much the top two teams in each pool to go through to the semis.
Robbie, New Zealand haven't dropped a game, and the West Indies may very well sort of rock up and say, actually, we feel like playing today, and upset the hosts.
Yeah, that is possible. They are capable of, they're a moody sort of side. Sometimes they look completely listless. I mean, there have been times in the tournament where we've felt that the West Indies are down and out, but they've got their ticket through. And by hook or by crook, you know, they'll also be thinking, just like South Africa, you know, we're sort of 3 games from glory. So they won't be writing off their own chances. But I tend to agree with Garen. I think that the teams who've sort of punched the heaviest, if you like, thus far, are the likeliest to go on to the semis and the final.